Darlington was a 12-year-old boy who lived in a beautiful house with his parents. They were rich, and Darlington had everything he could ever want. Every morning, he woke up in his soft, warm bed with his clothes already laid out for him. He wore the best clothes in town, shiny shoes, bright shirts, and jeans that fit perfectly. His parents always bought him the latest toys and gadgets. He went to the best school in town, where he had lots of friends and was always the smartest kid in class. Darlington's life was perfect, and he felt loved by his parents every day. They never missed a chance to spoil him with love and gifts. Every night, they would sit together for dinner, and his parents would tell him stories about when they were young. Darlington was always happy and smiling. He loved his life so much and was grateful for everything. His parents worked hard, but they always made time for him. Darlington knew that everything he had was because his parents loved him, and he was thankful for that every day. He had a perfect life, and nothing ever seemed to go wrong. One fateful day, Darlington's perfect life was shattered. His parents had to go for an important business meeting. They promised Darlington that they would return in a few hours. Darlington kissed them goodbye and ran off to play with his toys. He didn't know that this would be the last time he would see them alive. Later that day, Darlington's uncle came to their house. His face was serious, and his eyes were filled with sadness. He sat Darlington down and told him that there had been a terrible accident. His parents were in the car when it crashed. The crash was so bad that neither of them survived. Darlington couldn't understand what he was hearing. He felt like his whole world had fallen apart. He screamed and cried, hoping that it was just a nightmare. But it wasn't. His parents were really gone. Darlington was left alone with no one to care. After the death of his parents, Darlington was taken to live with his uncle. His uncle was his father's older brother, but he wasn't kind as Darlington's parents had been. Darlington expected his uncle to treat him well and take care of him, but things were different now. His uncle had a big family, and Darlington wasn't welcomed warmly. At first, things seemed okay. His uncle gave him a small room to sleep in, and he was allowed to eat with the family. But as time passed, things began to change. His uncle's mood became darker, and he started treating Darlington like a servant. He was asked to clean the house, wash the dishes, and do all heavy work. When he complained, his uncle would yell at him, telling him that he was lucky to have a roof over his head. Darlington was no longer the happy boy he once was. His uncle didn't care for him. He didn't treat him like family. Darlington missed his parents terribly, but there was nothing he could do. He felt lost in his new home. His uncle's children didn't talk to him. They were mean and laughed at him whenever he made a mistake. Darlington felt more alone than ever before. Things got worse as time went by. His uncle started sending him out to the street to sell things. Darlington had to carry heavy bags and tray and walk long distances in the hot sun. His uncle gave him no food, and when he returned, he was punished if he hadn't sold everything. Darlington became tired and hungry all the time. He missed the days when he was treated like a child, not a servant. Some days, Darlington couldn't sell anything at all. He would sit on the side of the road, feeling hopeless, watching other children play and laugh. He was so hungry, and all he wanted was a bite of food, but there was none. His uncle never gave him food, so Darlington started begging. He walked up to people on the street, asking for help, but no one cared They looked at him like he was invisible, and no one gave him food. Darlington, who had once lived a life of luxury, was now begging for scraps of food. It was so hard for him to accept that he had fallen so low. He used to be the boy with the best clothes, the best toys, and a loving family. Now, he was just a boy in ragged clothes, asking strangers for food. He even had to dig through the trash, looking for leftovers. Sometimes, he found bits of food that were thrown away, and he ate them. The food didn't taste good, but it was all he had. Darlington felt ashamed of himself. He had never begged for anything before. Now he had to beg just to survive. It hurt his heart every day to think about how much his life had changed. He missed his parents so much. He wished they could come back and make everything better. But they were gone, and Darlington had to face this new painful reality. One evening, when Darlington was walking back from the streets, something strange happened. His uncle's children had been failing in school. They were not doing well at all. They couldn't even pass simple tests. His uncle was furious and looked for someone to blame. He didn't want to accept that maybe his children were just not studying enough. So he turned to Darlington. "Darlington," his uncle shouted, "you must be the reason my children are failing in school. You must be a witch, and you are using your evil powers to make them dumb." Darlington's eyes grew wide with shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He didn't know anything about witchcraft. He had never done anything to hurt anyone, but his uncle was accusing him of something terrible. "Your parents were rich," his uncle said angrily, "and now they are gone. You must be the one who killed them with your witchcraft. You are a curse to this family." Darlington's heart sank. He didn't know how to explain that he wasn't a witch. His uncle's words were like a dagger to his heart. The next day, his uncle gathered the family together. He told everyone that Darlington was a witch. He killed his own parents, he said. "And now he's causing my children to fail in school. We must get rid of him." Darlington felt scared and confused. He didn't know what to do. His uncle's words seemed to echo in his ear, and the entire family turned against him. They called him bad names and told him to leave the house. Darlington couldn't believe this was happening. "Go away, Darlington," his uncle shouted. "You are not welcome here anymore. You are not my family. Get out!" With nothing else left, Darlington was pushed out of the house. He stood outside in the cold, tears streaming down his eyes, and he was all alone again, with no place to go. Darlington did not know where to go. He didn't have any friends, and his uncle had made sure he had no family left to turn to. He walked down the street with his head low, feeling like the whole world was against him. It was late in the evening, and the streets were empty. Darlington had nowhere to go, and he did not know what to do. Finally, he found a small bridge. It was dark, and no one was around. He sat under the bridge, wrapping his arms around his knees to keep warm. The cold wind made him shiver, but he had no choice. He had nowhere else to go. It was the first time Darlington had ever felt so completely alone. He lay down on the hard ground, trying to sleep, but his tears kept coming. His heart ached with sadness and fear. Days passed, and Darlington's life continued to be full of pain. He spent most of his time on the streets, trying to find food and shelter. Every day, he felt weaker and more hopeless. His stomach growled with hunger, and his body ached from exhaustion. He had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. It felt as if the world had forgotten him. One afternoon, Darlington sat by the side of the road, his head bent low. The sun was hot, and he had nothing to shield himself from the heat. His stomach was empty, and he hadn't eaten for hours. He looked at the people passing by, wondering if any of them would stop to help him. But no one seemed to care. They passed him, lost in their own lives, not even noticing this sad, hungry boy sitting on the street. Just as Darlington was about to give up and go back to the bridge, a car slowly pulled up beside him. The windows rolled down, and the man inside looked at him. He seemed to be in his 40s, wearing a suit and sunglasses, looking serious but kind. "Hey dear, are you okay?" the man asked, his voice soft but full of concern. Darlington looked up, surprised to hear someone talk to him. He had grown used to people ignoring him, so it felt strange to hear someone ask if he's okay. He nodded, but his voice was shaking as he said, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten all day." The man looked at him for a moment, his face full of pity. "That's not good. Hold on, let me help you." He opened the car door and stepped out. Darlington couldn't believe what was happening. The man had a kind smile, and he walked over to a small bag on the back seat of the car. He reached inside and pulled out a sandwich. "Here," the man said gently, handing Darlington the sandwich. "You need to eat something." Darlington took the sandwich with trembling hands. He was so hungry that he could hardly wait to eat. As he took a big bite, the man sat down beside him on the sidewalk. "You don't look like a street kid," the man said after a while. "What's your name?" Darlington chewed the sandwich slowly, his eyes filled with tears. For the first time in a long while, someone was treating him with kindness. He didn't know how to explain everything that had happened. His heart was full of sadness, but he smiled weakly and said, "My name is Darlington." "Darlington," the man repeated, nodding. "That's a nice name." The man paused, his brow furrowed as he looked Darlington over. He said, "I think I've heard that name, and I think you look familiar. I think I know your parents." Darlington looked up at him, surprised. "You know my parents?" he asked, his voice full of hope. "Who are you, sir?" The man smiled slightly and said, "I am Ben Adamu. I worked with your father." He called his father's name, and Darlington's eyes widened in shock. "Mr. Ben, you know my dad?" he whispered, almost not believing it. Ben nodded slowly. "Yes, I know your dad very well. We were business partners for many years. I remember when you were just a little boy. Your parents loved you so much." Tears filled Darlington's eye. He had not expected to meet someone who had known his parents, especially not someone who spoke about them with such kindness. "My father and my mother, they are gone," Darlington said, his voice shaking, breaking. "They died in an accident. I have nothing left." Ben looked at Darlington with a deep sadness in his eye. "I am sorry, Darlington. I did not know. But I do know one thing. You don't belong to the streets. Your parents would never want this for you." Darlington wiped his eyes, trying to hold back his tears. "I don't know where to go to. I don't have anyone now." Ben reached out and placed his hand on Darlington's shoulder. "That's not true," he said firmly. "You have me. I will help you. You don't have to be alone." Darlington's heart began to race. He had never expected someone to be so kind, to care for him after everything he had been through. You you will help me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ben smiled warmly. Of course. You are not alone anymore. Come with me. I'll take you somewhere safe. I'll take you to my place where you can rest and start over. You've been through enough. Darlington didn't know what to say. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of hope. Ben's kindness felt like a light in the darkness. He nodded, still unsure if he could believe it, but his heart told him to trust this man. As he drove away from the street, Darlington looked out the window. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he had felt like he was not alone in the world. Ben had promised to help him, and Darlington knew that he would never forget this moment. Ben's house was much bigger than Darlington had ever imagined. It was a beautiful home with a large garden and a pool in the backyard. It was everything Darlington had lost when his parents died, and yet it felt so different. This was not a house filled with his parents' love, but it was a place of safety. Ben welcomed him with open arms and gave him the guest room to sleep in. That night, after a warm bed and a meal, Darlington lay in a soft bed staring at the ceiling. He couldn't believe how his life had changed in just a few hours. One moment he had been begging for food on the street, and now he was in a comfortable bed with someone who cared for him. It felt like a dream. Ben came in the room to check on him before he went to bed. How are you feeling? He asked gently. Darlington smiled weakly. I'm okay. Thank you for helping me, sir. You don't have to thank me, Ben said with a soft chuckle. You are family now. We'll figure this out together. Darlington's eyes filled with tears. It felt like a miracle to him. He was no longer alone, and he had someone who would help him find his way. As Ben left the room, Darlington whispered to himself, I won't forget this. I will make my parents proud. And with that thought in his heart, Darlington finally drifted off to sleep, knowing that his life was about to change forever. As days passed, Ben took good care of Darlington. He made sure the boy had enough food to eat, a warm bed to sleep, and all the comfort he could offer. But there was still something that weighed heavily on Darlington's heart. He knew that his uncle had taken everything from him, and he couldn't rest until justice was done. Ben could see the sadness in Darlington's eye, and he knew that his young friend was thinking about the life he had lost. One evening after dinner, Ben sat down with Darlington in the living room. Ben began, his voice calm but firm. We need to get your inheritance back. Your parents worked hard for what they had, and it should belong to you. Darlington's heart skipped a beat. You mean I'll get everything back? He asked, his voice full of hope. Ben nodded. Yes, I'm going to help you recover your father's property. I know it won't be easy, but we'll fight for what is right. Darlington's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since he had met Ben, he felt like he wasn't alone in this fight. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know what to say. Ben smiled softly. You don't need to say anything. It's what your parents would have wanted. I'm going to make sure your uncle pays for what he did. Ben immediately started making plans. He hired a lawyer, someone who specialized in inheritance cases. They gathered all the paperwork they could find, documents from Darlington's parents' business, and the bank accounts, and even the will. Ben was determined to make sure that Darlington got what was rightfully his. Over the next few weeks, the lawyer worked tirelessly to prepare the case. Ben often sat with Darlington, explaining everything that was happening. He wanted Darlington to feel involved so he wouldn't feel lost when the time for the trial came. "You are going to be okay," Ben reassured him. "We have the truth on our side." Darlington nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. This was the first time he had ever truly believed he could get back his life. The day of the trial arrived. Darlington was nervous. His heart beat fast in his chest as he walked with Ben into the courthouse. The building was tall and intimidating, with people rushing around in all directions. Darlington had never been inside a place like this before. Ben held his hand gently, leading him to the courtroom. "Don't be afraid," he said. "We are going to win this." They walked into the courtroom and Darlington's uncle was already there, sitting on the opposite side. His uncle looked different now. He seemed more confident. He had a lawyer by his side and gave Darlington a cold, dismissive look as they entered. The judge entered the courtroom and everyone stood. He sat down behind the bench and looked at both sides. "Let the trial begin," the judge announced. Ben was called to give his witness for the case. Ben stood up, adjusting his glasses. He spoke confidently to the judge, explaining that Darlington's uncle had wrongfully taken everything from his nephew after the death of his parents. He presented evidences, including Darlington's parents' will, which clearly stated that their son would inherit their property. The lawyer for Darlington's uncle tried to argue, but Ben and his lawyer was ready. "Your Honor," Ben's lawyer said, "there is no doubt that Darlington is the rightful heir to his father's property. His uncle was taking advantage of the boy's vulnerable situation." Darlington's uncle stood up, looking angry. "This is a lie," he shouted. "I have taken care of that boy for years. He has no right to anything." The judge raised his hand, signaling for quiet. "We hear both sides," he said sternly. Ben's lawyer then presented more evidences, proving that Darlington's uncle had sold off properties, transferred money, and kept everything for himself, leaving Darlington with nothing. After a long day of argument and evidence being presented, the judge finally spoke. "This court has heard both sides. Based on the evidence presented, I find the defendant guilty of stealing his nephew's inheritance and exposing this boy to danger. Darlington is the rightful heir to his parents' property." Darlington's heart skipped a beat. He could hardly believe it. His uncle was going to pay for what he had done. The judge continued. "The defendant is hereby ordered to return all the property he has taken, and will serve time for his mistreatment of his nephew." Darlington felt a wave of relief wash over him. His uncle was going to be punished, and he was finally going to get his life back. When the trial ended, Ben and Darlington walked out of the courtroom together. Darlington couldn't believe what had just happened. For so long, he had felt powerless, but now everything was changing. "Mr. Ben," Darlington said softly, looking up at his friend, "I don't know how to thank you. You've done so much for me." Ben smiled. "You don't need to thank me. This is about doing what is right. I am just glad I could help." As they walked to the car, Darlington felt a weight lift off his shoulder. For the first time in years, he felt like he could finally breathe. The next few weeks were full of changes. Darlington's uncle was arrested and sent to jail for his crimes. His properties were returned to Darlington, and the family's wealth was finally his again. Ben helped Darlington move back into his parents' house. where he could start over, and he assisted him. Ben stayed close by Darlington's side, making sure that everything went smoothly. Darlington went back to school and his life began to look brighter. He even started to make new friends, and for the first time in a long time, he felt happy again. Darlington's uncle was now behind bars, and he could never hurt Darlington again. Darlington felt proud of himself. He had fought for what was his, and with Ben's help, he had won.